Abandoned conquests, let's play TTRPGs done right. War games and gaming, we're storming the chains of tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for joining. And we're going to talk about my Ashworlds campaign. It's nice that I finally got some people involved. I've been very bummed at the idea of not playing. It's been quite some time, and some people have shown some interest. So we're happy to see that. Uh, so we'll wait for some people to get in, see who's here that wants to listen. I invited all the players, although it is a little bit of short notice. So excuse me while I rail at pressing buttons on my stupid computer again. So we'll go ahead and sound off if you're in here, and let me know what you think, and if you're a prospective player here. So the D6 campaign and second edition. Real simple to learn. We'll go through that stuff. I've taught this to people whom are never played before, noobs as it were, and they learned in less than 15 minutes. So it's real simple to do, and we'll jump right in when everybody's ready. And so go ahead and let me know you're in here. The thing is, I don't want to wait or start unless I know people are in here listening, because I don't want to have to repeat myself, because I understand people might not come at the very second of the beginning of transmission. So D6 is just a dice pool system. It's real simple. We'll start with that. The majority of things, almost everything, revolves around any attempt to do something in the world that isn't a given or a complete impossibility has a percentage chance. Percentage chance. It has a chance of success or failure. That's based on its difficulty rating. Your skills create a dice pool. You roll that dice pool, sum up the roll. If it exceeds your difficulty check, then it's a successful. If it doesn't, it's a failure. Very simple stuff that way. So real happy to see it getting some interest here. Just going to ask people again. I'm trying to get them to show up. Oh, there we go. Okay. So one thing, I'd love to have more people. The whole idea of not being able to service a large party, I I can do that easily, up to 10 really, through Discord, potentially more. The only limit to that is through Discord. Sometimes the voice system is a little bit rickety, but on StreamYards, where I'd like to play, I can service at least 10 people. In theory, if the technology held up, it could be unlimited. But hey, how's it going, man? So uh, if you have people that you want to bring in, even if they aren't there for the beginning, I have what I call on ramps. I have a system that I have ingrained into this campaign so that there's always room for somebody new to jump in and not be completely lost. Sure, you'll have to give them a little bit of backstory before they play so they have some contextual, but they're not going to need to, go back and learn everything and all that sort of stuff. So it's perfectly feasible. I know there's a lot of campaigns where that doesn't even seem like it's a possibility. Here, it's ingrained because um, the general lore kind of lends itself to it, and I made sure that I could get that done because, frankly, there's a lot of churn. You know, unfortunately, people come and go. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I've been pretty good at captivating an audience once I get going, but um, just in case there's a rotation of players, there's always that possibility. Plus, it you get, somebody goes, man, I wish I really would have played, but I didn't know about it until this Tuesday. Now you can still play. So the entry point that was selected, I have about a dozen entry points, and I've run this campaign a couple of other times, and I use the different entry points and just randomly determine. I think it's a lot of fun. Um, there's lore, there's a story, as it were, but it is also emerge and play to a degree. So um, having that entry point. Um, the only problem I have or made for myself, kind of painted myself in a corner, is a lot of the lore is such that it's supposed to be a surprise, especially the intro. So if I give you too much, it's almost a spoiler alert. Suffice it to say this, that you're you're three years prior to the events of the original 1977 movie. If you have not seen that movie, and I have to remember that I'm old enough that there's people that actually haven't. I'm kind of a weirdo. The first time I ever read that people had never seen the original Star Wars, I was flummoxed because even people that weren't sci-fi people, we would go to the movies just for the social outlet, and everybody had seen it. Even those people are like, I don't like sci-fi, they went to hang out. But so anyway, if you've never seen it, there is a destruction of a planet. That planet is called Alderaan. That happened in the movie. Here, you're 3 years prior to that. Alderaan is a pacifist, intellectually um, focused world, and it's always had some friction with the new Imperial government over the last 15 years. Um, and as that increases over the from the end of the episode 3 up to where we're at now, there's a lot of policing and a kind of internment camp situation on Alderaan, and you play mostly professors from the myriad list of collegiate type academies that are on Alderaan. These intellectuals are seen to be subversive and antithetical to imperial order and are put in the camps. So that's the intro for you. So Alderaanians are humans, and they're like, as I say, pacifistic. Now that doesn't mean they don't know how to shoot a blaster. Target practice, and there are limited security forces. Um, it hasn't always been a pacifistic society. So melee weapons for ceremony, fencing for sport is still a thing. So when you start, you can have the blaster skill, which allows you to shoot small arms, and you can have a melee skill, which allows you to use older bladed type weapons. Now, don't think that if you're a prospective player and you're thinking, well, shit, I'm gonna, I I want to fight. You will. It'll get there. The system for increasing skills or jumping levels is similar to the old advanced Dungeons and Dragons, where you take the points, the experience points. In this game, they're called character points, and you take those points that you've earned, and you use a kind of a point buy to increase your stats. So many character points equal a pip or a tip up to your score in whatever you select. Now, to do that, once you've made the purchase, it doesn't go into effect until you go see a mentor or a trainer. So you go somewhere as a character and get the advancement. Now that's not going to keep you out of the game for long, or you're not going to miss a session due to it, but it is figured into things, into the timekeeping. You are welcome to make as many characters as you believe you can run. I don't want to get fussy or push anybody out of their comfort level or sound snobby, but I've never really gotten why it seems so many people find running more than one character concurrently a heavy lift. I'm I'm I might just be daft. It's you know we always did. It never seemed to be a problem. But it's up to you. I don't want to push anybody out of play but it is of benefit to make more than one character for a variety of reasons. So um, now this game is also NPC heavy. I've had people, again, I kind of personally wonder why, but I've had people say, "Oh, you've got too many NPCs in such and such." There's a couple of reasons for NPCs. Um, it's easier to spill lore contextually within the game and within role playing, as opposed to going, "Here's your homework, player. Go take this home and read this, novella." Not that you're going to get that much volume, but it's just easier to have it, you know, come out that way. Um, it's a skill-based system, and sometimes you'll find yourself needing a skill that you won't have. The whole point is you're not a skill, you're not adept in everything as a character. So, for example, maybe nobody picked the demolition skill, and then you're off somewhere where you need to, blow something up. Instead of that being some stone wall to work around, you hire, learn, or get hooked up with somebody that does have that skill as an NPC. I guess people found that as a way of railroading. I don't see how it could possibly be railroading. Some people found it as a way to artificially inflate the chances of the players. I see it as a way not to deflate them such that they go, well, how are we ever going to get around this? We've got this wall that we can't climb over because we forgot to take this skill. So I, I don't see it as a big issue. I've talked to other people and they go, I don't know what you're talking about. That's just part of gaming. It's no big deal. So I don't think it'll be a big problem. But you're going to see a lot of that. You'll see a lot of NPCs and stuff like that. So, but as far as reading, I do have lore. It is a vast and rich thing. Now, a lot of it comes from previous plays. So there's a lot of record of it and things like that. So if you're highly averted to reading anything, it's not going to make the game unplayable or anything like that, but you might miss a thing or two. Now, when I say reading, I'm not talking about a novella or anything like that. I'm talking about a paragraph or two here and there. And there's other things that I put out just for S's and G's for people who like to be immersed in deep lore, not necessarily contingent to know or contingent upon playing. You have to read it or whatever, but just things that might be fun to take a peek at or whatever. So that's all. Hopefully nobody will find it upsetting to have a little bit of direction as to what you choose for skills, but that's just what I'm doing is making sure that Alderaanians are played and created like Alderaanians are consistent with the galaxy at this time. So we'll set that up as to how many points you can put towards what and all that as far as combat stuff. Beyond that, you can choose what you want, but Alderaanians are typically knowledge heavy as far as skills. That's one of the categories of skills. There's technical, mechanical knowledge. Um, Knowledge is book learning, knowing languages, knowing history, knowing geography, knowing cultures. That's the kind of things that are prized as rewarding skills and such in Alderaanian culture. They won't be useless. You'll be glad you have them. Um, Believe me. So, what else? Oh yeah, if you're not, what I've done with lore also as far as technical lore and ships and stuff like that. If you just took everything ever written for D6 as far as ships, I mean, it's got to be in the thousands. No, some people that have said, "Oh, I don't know that I want to play Star Wars." The thing that holds them back is thinking, "I'm going to have to learn what all these different, types of weapons and stuff like that are." You don't have to really know that stuff. Um, there will be reference material provided so that you can familiarize yourself with it. Um, I try to keep that limited. There's a what I have is my own version of canon. I decide what fits inside my interpretation of Star Wars, and it comes from whatever source I deem necessary. That said, 99% of the stuff you're going to see me use comes from West End Games, which historically was the foundation for most of the expanded universe in Star Wars. There's even documented proof that George Lucas read some of that stuff to and used it in some of his writings for the prequels and stuff like that. So uh, you won't have to learn a bunch of stuff like that. I This was somewhat impromptu. I was surprised to see. Uh, if anybody else is out there listening, you're not familiar with the little mini saga of mine of trying to get people to do this in the last couple years, and so I was about ready to go. This is never going to happen. Nobody ever wants to play. And then all of a sudden, I get one person at least from a different platform saying, "Hey, I want to join." So hopefully that will snowball into having enough people. Um, and that's one of the reasons I encourage. I don't want to push on you, but I encourage to have more than one character. Is the more characters the players have, the less players we will need to, you know, it kind of compensates for that issue. Um, but we'll see where we can go. And then of course, we have to decide upon days and all that stuff and times, which makes even motivated players wanting to play. Maybe it won't work out schedule wise, but try to be optimistic, not a pessimist. Questions, comments? Again, this was somewhat impromptu because I thought was about to put this game on a shelf, and now I'm thinking, okay, now how do I brief these people? So if I've forgotten details, or haven't satisfied every question as to what's going on, please feel free to ask now. And this won't be the only time I do this because I'm sure there'll be other people that will want to either watch this one or get a new one. So go ahead and ask any questions that you have. Um, I could have prepared, but if you prepare a whole briefing and you wait a week, people might forget and not play. So I just jumped right into it. Takes about 10 seconds or more for people to respond because of my lag. So if anybody's watching and wondering, okay, what now? Yes, I'm filling up air until somebody types something out, if there is anything to type out question wise. In the interim, I guess there's another thing I forgot. The combat for this RPG isn't bad, but it can get lengthy and lead to a lack of determination and decisiveness. There's a lot of shots for a little effect, and some people say that makes it drone on and seem boring. So I have removed the RPG overly excessive plot armor and move to a very streamlined combat system using Western Games Star Wars Miniatures Battle, which was their mass battle add-on and standalone miniatures game, which in of itself is an absolute blast to play IMO, but it will make combat move along quickly. But use tactics, use cover, move around, you know, don't Leroy Jenkins or you'll get laid out. It's not excessively lethal, but without the plot armor, don't think you can just, it isn't going to be like the movies where there's 50 stormtroopers all shooting 5 feet wide of your shoulder. They're not they're not snipers. They're not great marksmen, but they're the trope of them being blind as a bat is about plot armor in the movies, and that's not here in the game. So act accordingly. Questions? Okay, I got your character creation stream late, so we'll have to review it. Okay, that's easy enough. We'll get into that. We'll do that for everybody. I'm thinking I'd like to play a historian for a character, one a philosopher, or for care. Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, we're basically looking for or the vibe that Alderaanians at this point that are incarcerated are typically a college professor like person. You know, uh, heavily scholastic, not real practical. You know, they can't change your tire, but they can score high on the SATs, that sort of thing. That'll change. It's old school gaming is you go from zero to hero. You don't start out. So you'll evolve as you go. As far as character creation, here's the thing. If anybody else is out there listening, or anybody for that matter, you don't need to purchase the stuff. You and use what I'll hand stuff out to you. They'll be this game was the product always came with the ability to distribute flyers that you could photocopy out of the books and give to players. The thought was we can't sell necessarily books to 5 people at a time. We can sell them to 1 person at a time, and then they can go find players by tearing out or copying these pieces so that everybody can try it, and then if the players like it, they go buy the book and stuff like that. So I can give you stuff. Now, one thing I've had a lot of people do is on their own initiative, probably trying to help or just because of lack of patience, is go out and find their own stuff and go, hey, look, I found this and that. And the only detriment, as a huge fanboy of West End games and this RPG, the only detriment is there's a 50 jillion damn versions. There is versions and subversions from the official stuff, and then there's stuff made by players that kind of paraphrase the system and make these modifications. And so you'll go out and find something, go, hey, look, I found this, and it'll be so dissimilar from what everybody else is doing, it causes a big mess. The first time I played, I was afraid to tell too many people no on things for fear I'd lose them as players. So I just let them take whatever they want. And we actually had to break for a week and just spend a session kind of ironing things out because some people were starting with more points than others and all sorts of stuff like that. So please stick with what I hand to you. That way it keeps it standardized, balanced, and easy for both you and me to facilitate play without a bunch of countermands and stuff like that. So the character creation is real simple. It's a point buy system. You'll get a group of points for your attributes and a group of points for your skills to start with. And that, as humans, and I'm old, so I can get even basics wrong sometimes. But as I recall correctly, that's why I was use reference. But I believe it's 12 for um, 12 points for attributes. And there's a minimum and maximum to be assigned to each attribute based on that pool. That's again to keep balance and stuff like that. So people just don't go, okay, I'm going to make myself strong enough to lift a tank and screw everything else. So you have to do a little bit of management and thought as to how you're going to spread those points around. So your attributes are dexterity, knowledge, mechanical, perception, strength, technical. Let's go through that one by one. Dexterity is very similar to D&D. It's primarily, but not exclusively, about uh, hitting things with blasters or arrows or things that you hurl. Every once in a while, you'll see a dexterity check for something else, but largely it's all about your accuracy with weapons, ranged weapons. We covered knowledge. That's scholastic stuff, brainy stuff. Mechanical is mostly about piloting things. We'll go through it. I'll just read it out. So it represents how well a character can pilot vehicles and starships and operate varying systems on board of those ships. That's not everything. Again, every once in a while, something seemingly rare will come up where you apply mechanical skill to it, even if it's outside of the purview of ships and vehicles. But largely, it's about that. Perception skills are not just about seeing things. Most people think of the word perception as being able to deduce things within your sight or something like that. It's that, but it's also anything that deals with like uh, negotiation, bluffing, that sort of thing, uh, as well as looking and find for things. So quick to spot concealed objects or people hiding around a corner. They're also good at convincing other people to do favors for them, tricking or conning others, and bargaining to get a good price for services. That's the kind of thing that does. Um, Now, strength is somewhat different than D&D strength. It does represent physical strength in certain things, but it also represents endurance and health. It's more of kind of a combination of strength and constitution if you're coming from D&D. Characters with high strength can lift heavy objects, push themselves for days because endurance without rest, and are good at resisting disease and injury. So, uh, and then the technical. That's computer stuff largely. Um, but technical skills have the ability to modify and to repair certain things, like droids. It also has to deal with computers, programming them, repairing them, and hacking them. Hacking in Star Wars is referred to slicing. So that's the general thing. Um, yeah. Now, skills. I will give you a list of skills. If you go looking for your own skills, list of skills, it can be extremely large. I've seen skills where there was effing dishwashing was in the skill list. Why? So I have one that has relevant skills that are there's probably more of them than there are in the original books, but they're good ones. They're interesting ones. They're utilitarian ones. They're not stupid ones like back scratching and basket weaving and all that stupid shit. There was one module that was kind of a tongue-in-cheek parody thing, and it had a couple of weird crafts in it, like basket weaving. And for some reason, I guess people in the interest of being thorough will add that into their skill list, and it's information that is not needed and clutters things up. So I'll provide a list of potential skills. They're fairly extensive, but not overwhelmingly so. So you can choose those, and that's basically the setup. You know, your physical description doesn't need to be extremely detailed, but for purposes of gaming, height and weight need to be there. And 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 don't think that every player, like, being brawny isn't the end all be all. You know, so go with what works for you. It's not excuse me, that kind of stuff isn't going to be tremendously pertinent, but there will be times where your size might come into it. And it isn't all about being big and powerful. Um, so just, make it to the specs that you want. As far as any other physical description, a basic, brown eye, blue hair, that sort of thing. You don't really have to get into, the moles on your back or anything like that, but, something you'd give a cop if you needed to give a description, the basics. That can come into play sometimes. Your origin story, the part that is really relevant to gameplay is already taken care of. You're an Alderanian and you come from intellectual circles. Any other detail is fine, but it may not serve any purpose in game, so you're just kind of writing fiction for yourself at that point. As far as equipment, there, just like D&D and all these other games, there are mechanisms for starting credits, but you're starting in the camps, so you ain't got no money. But don't worry, it's a challenge, but it's not it doesn't end up being as severe as it may sound. That's the best I can give you without being too much of a spoiler alert. It isn't going to hurt that much, but it is kind of, a lot of these beginning points are like Survivor type video games, or what do they call them? Survivalist games, where you kind of start somewhere, you don't really know exactly what's going on in detail, and you really don't have anything to work with, and you kind of got to work your way out of a puzzle and then go from there. That's kind of the vibe that's going on. So you'll see. Advancing works this way. Any skill and sometimes even attributes in the right circumstances can be advanced, but 1 pip per session. And I'll have to explain pips. I probably should start with that. The system divides the dice in 3. Everything, all your skills are, the nomenclature is number and then the letter D, which means how many dice, how many 6-siders you roll. Your dice pool is just a group of 6-siders. That's why initially I was like, this is like going to play Yahtzee. I'm not sure I'm going to like this, but it's Star Wars, so I've adapted to it, and it plays out all right. Sorry, I choke on dust if I don't sip every once in a while. But those dice can be divided. There's 2 pips. They're divided by 3. 1/3 equals a +1. 2/3 equals a +2. And then a full is a die. So let's say you have, how does this work? Usually what happens is you have enough to put 2 points in each of your attributes to start with, but you have at least 1 die left over or something like that. Well, you'll have to split that up. And so say you want to be extra strong. Okay, so you'll divide your spare die into 3 and put 2d plus 1, and then find 2 other attributes that you add +1 to. Something like that. I hope that's clear. Sometimes I could use a schooling on explaining these things. Sometimes I tend to make a simple concept sound more complex than it is. It's a little weakness of mine. But if that's not clear, I'll try to I'll find something that can word it out better. But once you go to advance your skills, typically you do that once at the end of the session. You can only apply your points such that whatever you're advancing only goes up 1 pip. So if you have 2d plus 1 and you want to advance it, it becomes 2d plus 2. because you've put 1 pip. So uh, there's a little chart that helps too. The other use for character points, which are the version of experience points that we're talking about, they can be used to change your die roll a little bit. You can burn them that way. Everybody with me so far? Hopefully I've been clear. Anyway, I was just waiting to see if there's any response. But then you have a force point. A force point, you start with 1, and that can be used to add an extra die onto your roll. And once you spend it, it's gone. But it's much more powerful. Instead of adding a bonus, it actually adds another die or changes a flub. So you can get force points back. The way you get force points back is to do something on the light side, is to do something excessively altruistic. Say, risking your life for another, something like that. Usually something that ends up harming your character's stats even temporarily, in order to further the life or further the success of a compatriot or something like that. And you can get that force point back. So those are the 2 point gauges for players. Light side and dark side. If you're light side and you start doing dark side stuff, if you ever played games like Jedi Knight 2 or anything like that, there's always that kind of slider. And like in Jedi Knight 2, if you just start randomly blowing up innocent droids and stuff, you start moving towards the dark side or something like that. There's a similar thing where if you really play out of the alignment, you can cross over to the dark side. At that point, you lose control of the character, not necessarily temporarily. If the characters, it goes to control of the GM as an NPC. The remaining characters can make attempts to redeem the person. If that comes up, we'll kind of cross the bridge. I don't want to muddy the waters with deep explanations for something that probably won't happen. But there's a series of mechanisms. A lot of that comes into the arbitration of the GM myself as to whether that's being achieved or whether it happens or something like that. But it really ends up being this. If you play too far out of alignment, you kind of knock yourself out of the game. That's the motivating factor to keep people to play it right and not kind of ruin the experience for everybody else. But sometimes role play leads to those kind of circumstances. We can cover them. Now, this game, I think it's probably best to replay from the light side. It's a lot easier, and I think a lot of people want to do that. That said, it is possible to mirror this thing and go from the dark side too. But that might be something for another day. Oh, and then there's this. I add this in. I've never been able to get this clearly out to people, except for a handful of people. And that's not because it's some difficult thing or people are not intelligent. It's just somewhat foreign to them. I love doing this though. I have two or three people playing what I call the domain game Star Wars thing, and that's a for lack of a better way to put it, it's as much of a war game as an RPG. Those people are controlling large forces, fleets, and divisions of troops, and administrating whole sectors as far as their economy and their choice of production and things like that. Because I've got those guys doing that and just starting, and presuming this Ashworlds ends up actually being played. Sorry for a monochrome of pessimism, but I've been down this road before. So I hope it all comes out. I'm glad some people are interested. I hope I can cultivate that and get enough people to play so that we're not just spinning our wheels. But if it does happen, those games are linked together in that whatever's happening in the domain is happening in the universe of Ashworlds, and they may cross paths. So uh, if there's a battle, for example, a large battle or a blockade or something of a particular world in the domain game, and the RPG people playing Ashworlds go to that world, and it's the same time of day or whatever in world, then they're going to see a fleet sieging that planet. So um, the two worlds, the action within the two, they're really the same world. They're just two games being played in the same world, and they have consequences that affect one another. So there's that. I don't know. Does that make sense? In the past, some people have looked at that and gone, "Oh, that sounds weird. I don't know if I can do that. It sounds too complicated." And then they bolt. Or other people just, why can't we just play the RPG? They kind of get flustered and upset by the extra level, and I'm not really sure why that would be. It doesn't really affect you. It's just an example of the emergent play that I talk about on places like TikTok. It's it's having a world that's actually functioning instead of being some setting for a story. So no matter what you do, it isn't going to make your contribution as a character to the world inconsequential. It's just it's just what else is happening elsewhere in the world. There's a war going on, stuff like that. So, what do you think? Anybody there still? Okay. Well, I don't know that I can't think of anything else, but I'm sure there is. Do you got any questions? Anything that you were wondering about that I may have missed? I'm sure there's something. I can't, but uh, what that? Oh, the Force. There's always somebody who, and I get it, but the this is here's the thing. In this particular time, um, there isn't very many um, Jedi at all. There is largely it's Kenobi, Yoda, Vader, and well, there's Skywalker, but he's not a Jedi yet, that kind of thing. So, and he's just a kid. It's 3BBY. He's on Uncle Owen's farm being browbeaten for not doing his chores and all that. But that said, they're crossing paths with some people that may look familiar to you from the movies is not completely impossible in this game. It's pretty rare. It may not ever happen, but because it's a functioning world and stuff like that, you may, if you're real lucky, cross paths with some famous people. No guarantees, but it's not impossible. It's all EU stuff. I do not do Disney. The only thing, here's the thing with me and Disney, is from what I've seen of Disney, and it's not everything, but I did watch Solo and all that stuff. There's a couple of scenes, and it's just my personal choices. I'm persnickety and weird. It's not anything other than that. But I've looked at a couple of things, a couple of scenes ago. That's what I expected to see in a Lucas depiction of this time period. And I may steal from that here and there. But as far as the actual lore, no. Andor, no. Not all the way through. Not anything like that story. This is the one, well, that didn't come up, so I won't even bring it up. One thing I will absolutely attest to taking out of Solo beyond everything else, because very little I did, but that stormtrooper um, police bike thing. I used to watch a TV show in the 70s called Chips, and uh, the cop on a bike thing was awesome. So I snuck that out, stuff like that. But largely it's EU stuff. The, Here's one thing I did. I foresaw people who were extremely well read in Star Wars fiction, the X-wing novels and stuff like that, and just I didn't want somebody to go, oh, I know exactly what this is because I read this book and I've got this lore in my head and all that. So everything is got the Star Wars vibe, and I've pulled it from particular sources, but in such a way that I defeat the metagamer who's got encyclopedic knowledge of all that fiction and stuff like that. So most of my stuff is taken from, like I said, D6. There's a couple of you know things from the Han Solo trilogy and things like that, but mostly it's taken from like Star Wars Insider and Star Wars Adventure Journals and short stories and stuff like that. So I don't know if you know the story or know about the George Lucas Holocron project and Leland Chee that started it. Um, that started in the late '90s and maybe early 2000s and never really finished. But there was the Holocron was supposed to change canon and categorize it and try to create some sort of continuity in something that had far too much chaos and overlapping licensing, grants and stuff like that. And I did my own version of that, where a lot of it I just said nope, that doesn't count, and I took very specific things. So um, and I also shifted a few things on the timeline to just kind of fit everything in, not heavily, few months or something like that. But so you're starting in the very late, almost turn of the year, 3 BBY. Um, but it real quickly it moves to 2 BBY and stuff like that. So yeah, it is just the Sahara in this building. Is that it? I don't. Hopefully that doesn't sound too evasive or vague, but I'm always touchy about too much spoiler alert. So does that does that satisfy or do? You know what I mean? But I guess too the other thing is that I've ran this in various lengths and various stages, like 3 or 4 times in the past. So a lot of the lore is developed lore from other play situations, stuff like that. Here's another thing I do when I've had people play from other starting points. I've kept their character sheets, I've kept their names, and I've kept some of those events that occurred as we played, and you will witness them from your starting point perspective, and that will be part of the lore and stuff like that. I hope it doesn't sound gross on a thing. I always hate when people eat, and I probably should hit the mute, but like I said, I gotta buy myself a humidifier. I don't know why it's so dry in here. Um, but hopefully that's helps you with things. And now here's another thing. Geography. There's a lot of maps of the galaxy. I've never seen more than one or two that were even remotely close to one another. I don't know why that is. Um, so if you're again if a player's got a lot of knowledge about geography from reading other novels or something like that, you may find that there's a planet in a place you didn't expect it to be or something like that. And because there's just so much inconsistency, and that's why the Holocron project started. But um, but I did that again just to keep people from being metagamers based on lore. So and lastly, I'm not, how do I put this? This is rated R. I play from the perspective that we have adults in the room. I don't play with minors that I'm aware of. I don't really try to card people. I probably should start because people will start talking if I don't, but I don't foresee a lot of young people even communicating on the channels that I do. But that doesn't mean you're going to see, pornography or anything like that. But it's got everything is Gen X, including you know, some of the things can happen. So uh, there are areas of the galaxy that are the seedy underground. They're controlled by Huts or Dark Sun or other criminal enterprises. And criminal enterprise involves uh, drug running, in some cases slavery, like Wookiee was, Chewbacca was a Wookiee slave, things like that. Um, and they're violent gangsters and criminals. So you'll see that sort of stuff. And the places that go for entertainment in areas like that tend to be risque. But again, I don't do unconsensual sex or anything like that. But uh, but it can get violent and a little raw. What's honestly, yeah, there's that, and but Lucas didn't do enough to keep things straight. There was periods of time where as much as Lucas, from what I've understood, was fanatic about trying to retain control because he had bad experiences with like THX 1138 and stuff like that. Sometimes the fact that he had to go in debt damn near and pull favors from people in the industry in order to even get Star Wars made, um, those favors got called in. That's how the holiday special came to be. And Lucas hated it and didn't want it to happen. Um, but Fox kind of pressed him because of the money that they, forwarded him for the production of the thing and all that sort of stuff. Um, so it kind of got out of control. Yeah. And more than out of control was the just total lack of consistency, to the point where things are confusing and contradict one another. So that's another reason I kept the lore somewhat minimal comparative to the entirety of it. But again, the primary motivation was I didn't want extremely well read people to be able to metagame the hell out of it, because they'd read, you know, every Anderson novel ever written or something like that. Um, yeah. So that's the entirety of it. Most of the So here's the other thing. If I do like emergent play, I do like, you know, players to think. I don't want to shackle people too much. So if you find something, a ship that, something like that, it may be laying around. I'm open to. I now usually don't even do this kind of thing because I always find that it seems restrictive to players. But in this particular case, if you see something um, of interest to purchase, like a ship or something like that, just run it by me, and I'll thumbs up or thumbs down. Um, which reminds me, there are 3 books. You may have seen me type this out previously or not, but just in case there's really anybody else listening, there are 3 books that were published in like 1997. One's called Grim Dark, one's called something something. They all have fantastic technology in their as part of their title. The fantastic technology was a contest that was put on by West End Games, and they put it on because they were having problems. They weren't able to pay some of their employees and things like that, and they needed to try to make money by selling more products. So what they did is they put on a contest and had player input create these 3 books called Fantastic Technology, and they're awful. There's a couple of things in there that are legit and cool, and I may use or may allow use, but the majority of it is stuff that it's either so overpowered or so clearly robbed from another universe that it just stinks up the game. But mostly it's because the stuff is highly overpowered. There was no checks and balances on it because the company was desperate. It's a shame what happened. I won't, I'll spare you all the history, but um, it was a company that made great products that went under because not because they started making bad products, but because managerial financial decisions and being connected with parent companies, that's what put them under. Kind of sucks. So I banned those books completely because I let them be used once and it just ruined encounters till I finally said, I can't let you do this anymore. It's just the fun is zapped out of it. But pretty much anything else from D6 is okay. That said, there's a couple of problems with D6. There's some technical books had a just like everything in the 80s and 90s or 70s and 80s, there was editing problems, and there are certain um, technical lore books that were completely boned in editing to the point where they had to issue a second edition. And there may be some knots to unravel if people start looking at that stuff. One of them has to do with personal ship upgrades and personal ship technology, which everybody wants their own ship. So the guidelines for that are kind of a difficult to navigate. So we'll have to go through that as a group when it comes to that point, um, because they kind of fouled that part up as far as text. But other than that, it's good. There isn't really that many big problems. Stuff like every once in a while you'll come across a rule or written in the book where you just look at it and go, that doesn't even make sense in English. Yep, the editors missed it, and you have to go and clarify it, but that's rare. Anything else? I'm trying to think of anything else. Um, I guess the only other thing to say is it the the ascension in level and ability is extremely shallow. Uh, you don't jump up. It may seem like wow, this is a lot of work just to get a little bit better. The thing to remind players of when they feel that way is any adjustment upwards, when you start putting out the probabilities of dice pools and stuff, it's fairly significant. So, um, even though the numbers don't seem to, they're only incremental and small ups and downs, it can make a fairly significant difference. Um, one other mechanic for resolution that I prefer just to be done with is in second edition, they put in this kind of dipsy doodle thing where you had a wild die. And the wild die, if it read one, then your roll was a miss no matter what, or a failure, and a fairly significant one. One where the GM was supposed to come up with something that happened, and that was not cataclysmically bad, but you know, something like, oh, you fumbled a grenade or something like that. And it seemed kind of game show sucky, you know. You almost heard that wonk 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 every time it came up. And it would make players kind of combative with the GM because they might feel like the GM's picking on their character if the bad thing that happened to them seemed worse than the bad thing that happened to the last guy and all that. The flip side was if you rolled a 6, you had an exploding die, which of course everybody loves. But I think it's a lot easier to just drop that because the negatives cause so much friction and stuff like that, and makes things a little weird and wonky. So, but I'm one for democracy. So I would say no. But if I have 5 players that absolutely want to do it, okay, that's fine. Yeah, and it's not supposed to be super bad, but I'm improvising a lot of things as it is. What if what I come up with seems clever, but then player A says, "Boy, that was really bad," and it's not fair because when you did it to player B, it just seemed like some little thing, and so it's just easier to just not do it at all. Just let the die be what they want. Yeah. Yeah. So there was one period I played with one where a guy was like, that's half the fun is the improv, the wild stuff and making it wacky and the he liked the idea of it being more random that way and stuff. Okay. And I tried not to be, I tried to be even-handed, and I think largely I was, but it just leads to the potential for people to go, "Hey, wait a minute," and why add that potential conflict you know, into the collaborative storytelling? It seems like an unnecessary addition. So it's a lot of reasons why you'll hear people say, "Well, second edition was worse," but I think second edition is vastly better because it's far more comprehensive. It has much more interesting choices and much better lore and depth. And you can just take the wild die and go, we're not doing that. It solves the problem. So I think it's better to do it without, personally. So, um, and I'll state that to people. You know, hopefully we'll go that direction. that's about it. There's a oh yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, the way that you were, this can cause, I'll have to go through this with everybody, but there's a way that you write out your attributes and your skills that I caught somebody doing this. I didn't even know, didn't even really think about it. And what they were doing is they were writing them out in such a way that it actually accentuated their abilities. And so there's a nomenclature that's used that adds attribute to skill die. And uh, I'll have to just write that out for people so they can see it. Because otherwise, what will happen is they'll inadvertently or purposefully write it in the wrong way, and all of a sudden they become a lot more powerful than they're supposed to be. So, hey, I got a couple of the new guys, and they're in the Discord. So I'm going to see if I can get them to jump in here, and we can all have a quick rap session if you are so inclined. As soon as I find what button to hit where. Oh, here we go. We can just do this. Oh, rats. Here we go. Is this it? Yeah, okay. There we are. So that gives us two. See if these guys jump in. Let me get rid of that. I'm reading it wrong. Okay. Yeah, it ends up being stuff like that. Or I have to come up with something like some people thought it was funny and comedic, you know. Oh, you slipped on a banana peel and shot the lights out. Now it's all dark in the room or something, you know. It was either stupid comic relief or it seemed like some artificial imposed penalty, especially when you got a really kick-ass roll. Oh, I rolled six die and they were all good except for this one that's a different color and it now it doesn't count at all. That really made people, and I don't blame them. I didn't like playing that way either. You know, so um, I just as soon drop it too. And I think when people hear that explanation, they'll be like, the majority of people go, yeah, 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 no, no, that sounds dumb. But just to placate somebody, we went with it one time, and kind of kind of a different vibe. So, but again, as long as we get everybody writing the nomenclature the right way, so they have the right count when they make the things and uh, that sort of thing, should be okay. But uh, I want to make sure everybody knows about the content warning. It's you know it's not ultra hardcore. It's you know, but you know you if you've seen the original movie, you know Solo just icing that Greedo under the table, the whole Han shot first. You know that thing, the original scene. Yeah, just going mafia with somebody. You can see stuff like that. You know the I play the NPCs fairly gritty, especially if they're you know um, from the underworld. So it's not for kids. And the Empire isn't just some caricature of bad guys with English accents. You know, these guys are my Empire people are they're mean. They're very mean. Yeah, the whole one shot first thing. That's you know, I that's the kind of you know peeling back of the layers and trying to water down um, of things that way. I don't hold for that. I want the adult raw hard, like I said with D&D. I want that hard edge, and so you're going to see that, right? Yeah, I mean that was it. It wasn't. It fundamentally changed the persona of Solo when they changed it. He wasn't a paladin. He wasn't, lawful good or anything like that. He was out for himself, and he would get the jump on somebody. He wasn't going to wait for them to. There wasn't honor in combat. There was just survival, and the best. He took the best option for himself, which is just to, that kind of thing. So he wasn't. So there was that. Um, so you'll see that sort of thing in the game if you, especially if you make it into the seedy underground and stuff like that. There's some pretty hardcore action. But keep seeing if I can get these guys to. Let's see if I do it. See if I can get them one more time. If I can spell right. And there we go. Okay. Yeah. So you can think of anything else? Anything else you need to know? Stuff like that. Like I say, there's going to be a lot of stuff that'll just come up as you start playing. Hopefully we can get it in the afternoon so everybody can be on the mic. It surely helps. But if you have to be on the chat, I did. There was a guy from Brazil that didn't speak English, and I don't know a lick of Portuguese and all that stuff. So it worked out okay with him doing text. But maybe we can get a daytime. I'm fine with. Well, I've got all the time in the world, so I can go damn near anything. I shouldn't say that. It's actually I do have a couple of things, but largely I can go about any time. But I prefer night because in my household, that's when I won't be inundated with people whom don't always respect boundaries, come through the door and ask questions and bother me and stuff like that during certain hours and stuff like that. So, um, but we'll work it out, hopefully. Dun, 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 dun. Uh, what I got here? Oh, oh, I know what's happening. Uh, One of the problems I'm having with people that join is uh, this stupid setting won't stop. I can't turn it off. Where it makes people sit in the room for 10 minutes before they can reply. And every time I hit the switch to stop it, it comes back on just a few hours later. So hopefully these guys won't leave in frustration. Um, that would be great. Yeah, the more the merrier. I'm trying to get these two guys. Hopefully they don't run off. That's a shame about that thing. That Discord does some weird stuff. And that's one of them. At first, I didn't even, oh, yeah, I might have lost one of them. At first, I didn't even know that that was happening until I finally saw it for myself. Where'd this guy go? Uh, mm, bear with me. Eh, Yeah, it looks like one of them already bowed out because of that. Darn it. I'm going to get this guy back, though. Maybe I can send him a message. Oh, I left. Oh, yeah. Pardon me, I'm trying to push buttons. Oh, yeah. One other thing. Yeah, that's weird. They just, okay. I one time I had people try to hijack my game. So if I when we do a meeting with certain people, if I seem a little gruff or aggressive, I don't want that to happen again. That was probably the worst behavior I've ever seen out of anybody doing that. Um, Pretty wild. Oh, that guy looks like he. Huh. Anyway, yeah. See if we can get some other people. Uh, Weird. And then on top of it, I don't know why you would block somebody that has a spam filter, but the guy blocked me. All right. Well, I got one new guy then instead of two. Okie dokie. Yeah, I can't seem to send him a message, so but we got one. All righty. I got at least one of them. Okay, I keep trying to think of anything. Not much I can come up with. Like, uh-oh, what's this about? Okay. Okay. Mm, 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 mm. Having a little communication coordination problem. But um anyway, okay. Yeah, bring them in. I'll stay on and talk. Give them a briefing, if you get them in. Oh, there we go. How's it going? Got him in. Great. Somebody on Twitch. Anyhow, yeah, and I always open with a crawl, like the one I posted earlier. Um, I'm trying to make them better. Trying to get a star field in there instead of just the black and get the right font and all that. But we'll see where it goes. Da, 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 da. Oh, and as far as character demise, it can happen, and but that's another reason why um, the plethora of NPCs around you is a benefit because it you can always just assume one of them should you want. But again, because there's all the on ramps in every session, if you want to make another character and jump in from that direction, you can. It does frustrate people because they want to be right back at the same level everybody else is. It doesn't really take that long to catch up. Um, I mean, I'm not opposed to letting somebody who wants to catch up have two advancements instead of one each session, just for compensatory reasons, so that they retain in the game when they get their new guy or something like that. But um, I've also played around with the idea of just having um, a corral of NPC, you know, to pull out of if to put on like a new jacket if you lose your current one. But uh, but that's how you can handle that. Bah, 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 bah. Oh, as far as miniatures stuff like that, it really does. Here's what we're gonna do. The nobody has to buy any programs or anything like that, but just look at my shared screen, and that way you can see I can put out some form of encounter uh, where people can see what's going on and positions and stuff like that, because different positions and things really matter more even than D&D. Especially when you're dog fighting, you're out, where you are comparative to the others and what maneuvers to make in order to catch them and things like that. If you take that away, it's not really fun. And to try to describe that um, orally or in text, it doesn't. It's very hard. It takes time and it doesn't come off well. So I'll just share a screen. Everybody can see what's going on and make decisions based on what they see, and I'll just move the pieces so you don't have to buy the program or anything like that. Um, St- StreamYards is what I'm in right now, and I can get this like here. I know you say you can't use your mic or whatever, but if if you were to just click on that, that puts you in what they call the green room, where you'll see I've been invited or you've been invited to my live. And when you click on that, I'll see a little window that's yours, and I just add it to the stage, and then you'll be up there and be able to talk and stuff like that. It's been fairly, excuse me, it's been fairly foolproof as far as audio issues, but computers is computers, and not everything, if there's a tech glitch, that can happen, but it's been pretty good about it, about being able to just go, oh, I see your mic, I see your camera. Do you want to turn them on? Yes. Do you want them to be used here? You can say no to the video and say yes to the mic or whatever, and bingo, bango, bongo. And even if you can't use it, there's still text to type in, stuff like that. It won't necessarily be recorded. I have no need to record this thing, so if people don't want to be on live or anything like that, they don't have to, that kind of thing. So yeah. Yep. All right. I think at this point, I guess being on YouTube is only complicating matters for these new folks. So maybe I shouldn't have added an extra loop and just go back to the thing and see if we can. So if you're still here and you want to bring more people in, just bring them into the Discord. I'll get on. Oh, there we go. Hey, there we go. See. All right. Or that. I don't know if the other guy gets it that I'm on YouTube. I keep trying to tell him. So there you go. So you're on. Now you can put on whatever, like I've got the background. If you go in to the gear wheel, you'll see visual effects, and you can put a background on if you desire. Up to you. There's a couple of little switches for the microphone to dork with if you need it. But anyway, there's a commentary, there's a chat commentary, private chat, open chat, stuff like that, where you can converse with us and stuff like that. So it should work okay. I'm pretty sure you've got access to the private chat, right? So, or the comment. Yeah, it says private chat. No, I can't. There we go. Hello. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yeah. So that works out fine. We'll make it work some way or the other. But if you can get on mic, that'd be even better. But either way. But now you see how that works. So that just sets you up and on you go. I gave the guy the link. I guess, I don't know. There was two. Now there's only one, but whatever. At least we got one more. So if you find any more than want to play, that's great. All right. I hear another little pop, pop. Yeah, so there you go. And then you just added the stage. Now you can see. There you go. Now, there's also a way to give yourself an avatar. Where do you do that? Is that in general? Well, I'll remember where it is. So I forget exactly where it is, but somewhere you should be able to give yourself a, maybe just turn off the camera. I guess it really doesn't matter. Oh, but if you want an avatar, we can figure out how to do that too. So, but there it is. And then I can share screen. It's just So there's the Discord on my share screen. There you go. And I can, and that way everybody can see the encounter battle without having to uh, buy the software and all that stuff. Keep it free and easy. Okay, I guess I'll wrap it up and switch over to Discord. Feel free to jump into the voice channel, see if that works for you. This new joiner, I don't know that they're going to make the, I'll see if I can get them enticed to talk in there. It's just easier to talk, for me to talk on voice for something like this. But anyway, send anybody you find over to Discord, I guess, and I'll just wrap this up and keep going over there because I can't get this guy to come over here. Oh, well, I guess that doesn't matter. If you got share screen, it doesn't matter. But we'll talk about that on the other place. I'm going to do that. I'm going to see. Can this? Okay. I think they're gone. It says their lights on, but I think they've already logged off. So whatever. They're also talking to me in Substack. Don't know why. Okay. There. Gotcha. Okay, which one is that? 17. Oh yeah. Okay. Is there okay. I'm trying to link up with this individual and I can't really find out. These things don't tell me specifically who's logged on. That would be nice if it did. So I don't know who's here or not. Currently it says nobody is. Is this thing on? All right. I'm going to go over to Discord. Oh, there we go. Now we got another person. Hello. I just want to make sure I'm actually briefing the new people instead of repeating myself to people that have been listening to it already. Nope, now they left. In and out. Or at least according to this thing. Okay, now it's not. All right. I'm just going to cut this off. I'll go over to Discord. Hopefully everybody can link up over there. Thanks for joining. We'll get it together. Okay.